The wind carried needles that morning, not sharp enough to kill, but steady enough to remind the body it had bones. Snow fell like sifted flour on the edges of the old Taylor homestead, softening the sagging corners of its fence, the shutter that never closed fully, the porch rail chewed by time and raccoons. Winter had settled not with a storm, but with slow silence. That was the worst kind. She moved through the snow, like someone used to not being noticed. Wore her father's wool coat too big, the collar pinned shut with a nail. In one hand, she carried a chipped tin pail. In the other, the long barrel of a squirrel rifle her uncle left behind before vanishing south. Her name was Ruthie, though no one had said it out loud in days. She was 24, with eyes that looked gray in some light, storm blue in others. No man had come to court her. A few had tried to barter for her, before her mother died. But Ruthie had a way of looking at a man that made him feel like he'd just confessed something awful. She wasn't beautiful, not in the way the town girls were. Her cheeks were sharp, and her mouth too solemn. But she was something deeper than pretty. She was true. Folks didn't know what to do with that kind. Her boots were thin-soled, leaking near the toes. She didn't mind. Cold had been her shadow for years now. Her mother used to say, "We're part frost, part flame, child. That's how we survive." Ruthie didn't feel much flame these days, but she still walked forward. She followed the tracks past the tree line, the pine branches like reaching arms. Something had bled here last night. She could smell it. Metallic. Warm once. She found where the snow was churned and dirt showed through. A body had been dragged. At first, she thought it was a deer. But deer didn't have braids. He was crumpled between the roots of a split oak, half covered in fresh fall. His chest moved shallow. Blood soaked his thigh and his shoulder, dark against skin that was sun-warmed even in death's edge. His face was painted with ash and red ochre, mostly smeared now. And beside him, paw prints. Not one or two, but 5 or 6. Wolves. Not a full pack, but enough. Her hand went to the rifle. Then she saw the eyes. 2 of them, golden, low to the snow, just 10 yards away. Then 2 more. They weren't rushing. They were watching. She didn't panic. Instead, she raised the rifle, aimed skyward, and pulled the trigger. The crack shattered the silence, echoed against distant hills. The wolves flinched. One barked a low, guttural sound. They turned slowly, fading into brush like ghosts. She waited a full minute, breath sharp, fingers still on the trigger. Then she knelt beside him. His breath stuttered in his chest, eyes fluttering but not waking. He'd been mauled bad. The shoulder wound was deep, but the thigh, Ruthie frowned. Infection would come soon. She could have walked away, could have whispered a prayer, marked the spot with a branch. Could have left this man, this Comanche, to be reclaimed by his own people or the snow. But her mother's voice lived in her still. Help without asking who they are. That's how we stay human. So Ruthie took the man's wrist and slung it over her shoulder. He didn't groan, just sagged heavier. It took an hour to drag him back. The snow helped. She used a grain tarp, tied at the ends, and pulled like a mule. Twice she stopped to rest. Her palms burned. Her shoulders screamed. But she didn't stop. At the edge of the yard, the hens scattered. Inside, the stove still held embers. She stoked it with old corn husks and pine chips, then laid him on the quilt her mother had sewn with her last good year of hands. She stripped the ruined buckskin shirt from his chest. He was lean, marked with old scars, ribs showing. Not starving, but worn. She cleaned the wounds with whiskey, wincing as he stirred once. His eyes fluttered, but he didn't speak. She stitched the shoulder first, then the thigh, pausing only to reheat the needle when her fingers shook. By sunset, he was wrapped in clean flannel and resting near the stove. His breathing had steadied. She spooned broth into his mouth while whispering things she hadn't told another soul in years. That the nights were the hardest. That she missed her mother's lullabies. That silence was a second kind of death. He didn't reply. But he didn't die either. That was something. She slept in the rocker that night. One eye on the fire. One ear on the wind. It snowed again. By morning, light poured through the broken shutter like soft gold. She fed the hens, chopped wood, carried water. He slept. On the third day, he woke. She heard him move, heard the scrape of his hand against floorboard. She entered slow, holding her breath. He was sitting, propped on an elbow, hair falling around his face like a curtain. His gaze met hers. Sharp, but not cruel. She didn't speak. He didn't either. Then, finally, his voice low rasped. Why? She set the water basin down. Because wolves don't ask questions. People shouldn't act like them. He blinked. Tried to stand. Failed. She helped him lean back, her fingers brushing his chest for only a second. You Comanche? She asked. He nodded. You got people near? Another nod. Slower this time. Where are you? They coming. Maybe. She paused. You tell him I shot you? His mouth twitched. Could have been pain. Could have been humor. No. You saved. A quiet settled between them. Not cold this time. Just watchful. She brought him stew later. Left it near the fire. He ate with his fingers, slow and deliberate, like a man used to hunger and distrust. He didn't thank her. She didn't expect him to. That evening, she told him her name. Not like an offer, but like a truth she needed to say out loud. Ruthie, she said, folding laundry near the fire. He didn't say his. That night, she dreamed of wolves. Only they weren't wolves. They were men, faces masked with fur, claws made of coins. She stood between them and the man by the fire, rifle in hand, heart hammering. She woke before dawn, sweating. He was still sleeping. Next day, he tried to walk. She caught him before he fell. He leaned against her for the space of 5 steps. Then he straightened, pride wounded deeper than flesh. She said nothing, just set a chair near the door and let him sit in the sun. He watched the trees like they were whispering secrets. He asked for nothing. She offered little. But in that space, those shared silences, something softened. He helped shell beans later. Slow, clumsy, but trying. She smiled once. He noticed. Looked away fast. Later, while she scrubbed pots, he lifted her mother's comb from the shelf. Ran it through his long black hair with reverence. Not vanity, ritual. She watched him for a moment longer than she meant to. Then turned away. By twilight, clouds gathered low. The smell of snow again. She found him at the door, standing now, without aid, his hand gripping the rail. You need to go, she asked. He didn't answer, but his gaze drifted eastward, toward something far and fast. She saw it too, on the edge of sound. A thudding, rhythmic, like many hooves. How many? She asked. He didn't blink. All. They come. For me. Why? He glanced at her. A long, unreadable look. Because I didn't die. She closed her eyes. Felt the cold edge of fear. Not for herself. For him. You ain't healed, she said. He looked away. That won't matter. She stood beside him. Not close, but near enough for her coat to brush his. You think they'll take you? They'll come to see. Ruthie nodded. Then, without a word, she lifted her hand and placed it gently on the porch rail beside his. Not touching, just beside. A quiet promise. Not of love. Not yet. Just a presence. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the rocker, watching the door, the fire low. And outside, deep in the dark woods, the horses gathered like thunder behind the hills. The sun rose slow and gold, casting long fingers through frost-glazed windows. Ruthie moved through the morning like someone waiting for something inevitable. She boiled coffee over the stove and cut the last of the cornbread into careful squares, as if normalcy could shield a heart from what she already knew was coming. He sat outside now, wrapped in one of her quilts, legs braced, back straight. The bruises on his face had begun to fade. His eyes, though sharp as obsidian, hadn't dulled once. He hadn't said much since the night he heard the hooves in the distance. Didn't need to. The silence was the kind that thickens the air. By mid-morning, the snow began again, light and slow. And then came the sound, not wild, not scattered, but purposeful. Hooves. Dozens. Maybe more. Moving in a line. Not at a gallop, but like a river flows, deliberate, ancient, unbothered by fear. She didn't look out the window. She didn't grip the rifle. She simply ladled a second bowl of stew and set it on the table. He stood on the porch, shoulders square, jaw tight. And then they came. First, the wind seemed to split, then from a tree line. Riders broke free, 12, then 20. Faces painted in earth and ash, adorned in eagle feathers and war leather, their ponies silent over the snow. They circled the house without raising dust, hooves muffled by the frost, eyes sharp as icicles. Ruthie stepped outside, her hands bare despite the cold. She didn't speak. The Comanche man moved forward one slow step, no weapon in hand, just breath visible in the morning chill. A gray-haired elder dismounted. His hair was braided with buffalo beads, and his face bore the stillness of trees that had seen lightning. He did not speak to Ruthie, not yet. He looked at the man beside her. His gaze was not questioning, but heavy with things unspoken. "You breathe," the elder said finally. "We thought the wolves took you." The warrior nodded. "They nearly did." "And she sent them away." The elder looked at her then, long and deep, like someone judging not the skin but the silence behind it. He stepped closer, slow, and set something down on the edge of the porch. A carved wooden flute, the kind only given to kin or bond. "She took you in?" the elder asked. The man didn't answer. He didn't need to. "She could have let you die," the elder said again. "Yet she chose not to." The girl didn't shift, didn't flinch. She looked the elder in the eye and spoke quiet as breath. He bled. That was enough. A murmur passed through the riders, not of disapproval, but of something older. Recognition. "You did not know who he was," the elder said, his voice rough but steady. "I knew he was human," she replied. The elder nodded. Then, with a single motion, he signaled his riders to dismount. They did so silently. One by one, they approached the porch, not to invade, not to inspect, but to witness. A woman near Ruthie's age stepped forward, face painted in gentle spirals, and held out a bundle wrapped in elk hide. Inside it, 2 thick pelts, a bundle of herbs, and smoked meat. A gift. Ruthie didn't reach for it. "I didn't help him for trade," she said gently. The woman smiled. "It is not trade. It is thanks." Another woman, older, her braids silvered and tied in red, stepped forward. Her eyes were milky, sightless, but her steps did not falter. She took Ruthie's hand. "You carry your mother's scent," she said in a voice like wind through dry grass. "Soft pine and sorrow." Ruthie's breath caught. The old woman didn't let go. "You were not born for loneliness. You were born for long fires and strong hearts." And then, almost as if rehearsed, the entire group turned, not away, but inward, toward a space only they understood, a decision forming in the silence. The elder looked again to the man Ruthie had saved. "She has no one." He shook his head. "She had a mother, but death came quiet. No father. Gone. And the town. They call her strange, unwanted." The elder turned back to Ruthie. "We do not take what is not offered, but we do not leave warmth out in the snow either. Come to us, not as prisoner, as witness. We will not bind you." She looked between them, at the snow, at the man still wrapped in her mother's quilt. "I have a roof," she said, "a leaky one, a stove, some chickens. This is my home." The elder nodded. "Then we will not ask you to leave it. But if you wish, come, even once, and see what it is to be known." She didn't answer, not with words, but she stepped down from the porch, past them all, and followed the elder to the circle beyond the trees. They walked for hours. She rode behind one of the women, her hands numb, her thoughts warmer than her body. By sunset, they reached the village. It was quiet, half sheltered in a canyon that breathed warmth from stone. Fires burned low. Children played near the smoke. No one stared. No one whispered. They took her in as if she were expected. That night, she sat beside the fire with women who plaited her hair and children who asked nothing of her but presence. One placed a stone in her palm and said, "For keeping wolves away." Another tugged at her braid and said, "Your eyes look like rivers frozen in moonlight." The old blind woman sat beside her again. "You are quiet," she said. like trees in heavy snow. That is not weakness. That is weight. Ruthie looked at the fire. I don't know what I am. You are seen, the woman said simply. You are seen. Later, as the flames dropped to embers, the warrior sat across from her. No war paint now, just a clean face, the scar on his jaw bare to firelight. My name, he said finally, is Teom. It means stays through winter. She nodded once. That fits. He looked down, then back at her. When the wolves came, I dreamed I was dead, but someone touched my hand. That's how I knew I wasn't. She didn't speak. He added, it was you. The fire crackled. Ruthie felt something in her chest, like something thawing. I don't know how to belong, she whispered. He looked at her, soft-eyed. Then we'll learn it slow, like fire learns wood. The next morning, she returned home. Not because she had to, but because it was hers. But she didn't come alone. The riders moved with her, a soft guard. Not to show power, but respect. Teom rode ahead. She followed, wrapped in furs they had gifted her. The town saw them before they arrived. They stepped out from barns, from the saloon, from the store with its always locked front door. Murmurs spread. Faces stiffened. The girl they'd ignored, the one they called unmarriable, peculiar, wild with sorrow, now rode between warriors, her back straight, her eyes clear. Teom stopped in front of her porch, dismounted. He turned to face her, then glanced at the townspeople watching. He said nothing to them. He spoke only to her. I do not ask you to leave your land. I do not ask you to come with me. But I will place firewood here each winter. I will stand near if you ask. And if you choose to step across into my life, I will never turn you away. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She stepped forward, and before the eyes of a town that had once turned its back, she reached out and touched his cheek with one hand. She whispered, let them see. Then, louder, let them remember what it looks like when the ones they left behind choose gentleness anyway. He took her hand, didn't kiss it, just held it. That was enough. A woman at the edge of the street lowered her head. A child waved shyly, and somewhere in the hush, the wind changed. Later, when snow began again, Ruthie stood on her porch watching the riders disappear. Teom stayed a moment longer, looked at her, then turned back toward the trees. She didn't call after him, didn't need to. There was a quilt still folded inside, a fire still warm, and a new flute beside the window. In the years that followed, the town learned to knock before judging, learned to bring bread instead of gossip. And on the coldest nights, a single rider would appear from the woods, quiet as breath, always welcome. Because the girl who saved a warrior from wolves had taught the West something it had nearly forgotten. That love, real love, walks. It doesn't chase. And it always comes back.